Here.
Member Nelson?
Here.
Member Jones? Here. Member Onick?
Here.
Member Christ?
Here.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the meeting agenda. If I could get a motion from someone, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next is approval of the meeting minutes, and I guess I can make a comment about those. You probably noticed that they are much less detailed, so that was part of what the city has decided to do for all the various boards and commissions to take away some of the perceived discrepancies and some of the detail of what people said in the exact verbiage. It's time-consuming to sort through that sometimes, and they're trying to be much less detailed but get the general point across. So you'll notice the same similar style moving forward for us and for everyone else. So, all right, so we still need an approval and a motion for that.
So moved. Second.
All right, there's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. And moving on is the community comment section, and I do not see anyone out there, so I don't think we need to say much about that. We can move on to the reports and recommendations section. First up is Ann talking about the Grand View Facility Operational and Feasibility Study.
All right, thank you very much, Dan and Park Board. I have a few presentations for you this evening, and I'll try to keep them as brief as possible. The first is a report on the Grandview Facility Operation and Feasibility Study. Just a little bit of background on Grandview. I know that you have heard a lot about the process and the status of Grandview to date, but just a little bit of background. In November of 2014, the city entered into a partnership with Franshu to collaboratively plan the public works site. And 6 scenarios were prepared after collaborating with public and the real estate market. 4 scenarios included public-private uses of the site, and all public and private scenarios were modeled. In May of 2015, the council expressed preference over scenario 3. And after that, ESG Architects was engaged to refine scenario 3 and conduct a preliminary architectural study. And then in September of 2015, the City Council provided feedback and direction to staff to continue to work on further refinement of this concept and provide an update to the City Council by May of 2016. And that's where we get involved. So as we looked at what we felt the next critical steps in this process involved, we started to think that while the work that has been done to date regarding the community facility at Grandview, the work has been really good, we needed to really do a deep dive into potential operations, programming, feasibility, site analysis, to really determine which programs and facilities are going to best meet the needs of residents and also create the most efficient facility possible. And we felt that the challenge is to recommend a multi-generational facility that meets current and future needs, adds community value, combines resources, and replaces aging and dated facilities and programs. So staff was directed to select a consultant to assist with the further operation and feasibility study. And so we have spent the last month to 2 months exploring possible partners and funding sources for further study. So I have 3 partners that I would like to recommend tonight to continue with us on this study. The first is HGA Architecture. HGA would provide visioning and programming, site analysis and conceptual design, cost estimating, and then the overall final report. We propose that HGA would be the lead consultant in this project. They have recently completed a variety of very successful studies and projects, most notably in this area for the cities of Minnetonka, Golden Valley, St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie, and Bloomington. And they have a very impressive resume of community centers, but also arts, performing arts, and visual arts facilities as well. So we felt that they were really a perfect match for us to take to the next step. Then with that, not only did we need the architectural side of things, but we also need the business plan, pro formas, and somebody really to help us with the operational analysis of whatever we propose to move forward. And Pros Consulting really rose to the top of the list for me. If you recall, Pros Consulting worked with us most recently on the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Strategic Plan, and they are very well known nationally for the studies that they have completed. And what they would do is they would help us with data collection and market analysis, community and stakeholder public input, program identification, facility building program, operational plan, and then they would help provide a draft report, presentation, and a final report. And then lastly, we felt that we needed someone that really specializes in the art world because an arts component is likely to be a significant part of the Grandview facility. And Sutton Associates has recently worked on some earlier stages of the Grandview study, but they also worked with us since 2012, completing an operational analysis of the Art Center. And they've been involved continually since 2012, helping with programming and providing operational advice and assistance there. And they also have completed very sizable and significant studies in a variety of different locations, as stated. So what we're proposing for the next steps in the process is to, first of all, form a task force. I'll talk about that in a minute. But the task force would meet with the consulting team at every step during the process. The task force will be the leadership group representing the key stakeholders and will provide direction to the consulting team. And in terms of a public process, we're proposing 2 open houses. One would be an initial open house to gather information to include in the study, and the second would be to gather final feedback prior to finalizing a recommended model. So that second one would come after we have maybe 1, 2, or 3 possible recommendations, and we would get feedback on the final culmination of a final recommendation. So that leads us to the task force. What we're recommending for the task force is 2 members of the Park Board, 2 members from the Arts and Culture Commission, me, Susan, Michael Fry from the Art Center, Donna Tilsner from the Senior Center, Amanda Clark, one of our recreation supervisors, and Val Burke from Community Ed. The project costs are as follows, for a total of $92,100. $82,100 would be funded through Parks and Recreation professional services budget over a period of 2 years, and $10,000 would come from the 2016 Edina Arts Center budget. The timeline that's proposed is to have this project approved by the City Council on November 17th, next Tuesday at their meeting. We would start the study in early December, probably the first week in December, and we are shooting for a project completion of 4 months. So with that, I would stand to answer any questions and ask the Park Board to appoint 2 members to the task force.
All right, thank you, Ann. Are there any questions?
So I've got one, Ann. I guess when I read this, the first thing that jumped out at me was the need for 3 different consultants, kind of part A of this. And do we really think that there's not enough competency in an HGA to cover the arts? I think you said that their specialty seems to be community centers, visual, performing arts. So do they not have that competency that we need, so we have to have a Sutton involved, right? That would be kind of one. And then thinking of pros, is there not already a lot of work that was done in our strategic plan that should go right into this? Or are they really going to go out and redo all this kind of community surveying and gathering data, almost as if we were kind of going through that in some great detail over the last 6 months?
Great questions. Certainly, I feel that hiring pros is going to benefit us in the fact that they have been involved in so many of the studies and they've been involved in the strategic plan, but we have not done any studying to the level of detail that we need to do for this plan. What I would expect us to have as a final product of this is a very, very specific operational plan, business plan, and pro formas to say, we're going to have A, B, and C components of this facility. This is what the programming is going to look like. This is what the staffing is going to look like. And to get into the second part of your question, too, I was definitely looking for very specific skill sets as part of this study. And I feel like it's really critical that we get someone from the arts community that has a very wide background in a wide variety of arts. Pros Consulting does not feel that they have the background either locally or just as a staff to really look at the arts community and say, this is potential programming, these are potential partners. I felt like it was really important that we had someone working on our team that was very, very tuned into the local arts market. And that's where Sutton comes in. As far as your question regarding HGA, they are amazing in helping us pull the whole plan and put it together. They can design performing arts facilities. They can design visual arts facilities and figure out the best way to make those work together. But in terms of HGA suggesting that, we use, this particular art group to come in and partner with us, or this particular store to come in and partner with us on selling arts merchandise. That's just not going to be the specialty of either HGA or Pros.
Okay, so I'll just follow up on my reaction to first the proposal. One, I am delighted that this is the path that we're taking. I think it's needed and necessary to come up with a strong report that would show the feasibility of what components would go in there. And based on that, I was delighted to see Pros and HGA as part of that. I am extremely concerned with the choice of Sutton, and that is because, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's because that the lead of Sutton, George Sutton, is also the executive director of the Sewell Ballet. And in one of those many meetings that we have had in Grandview, we became aware that they are interested in pursuing that space if it becomes a performing arts space. So my concern with using them in this manner as a consultant is that I feel that we will not be beyond reproach. I think that they do have interest in that property, and I am concerned about a conflict of interest and any kind of. I want us to make sure that the numbers that we present that would either say yes or no to a performance arts space, we can stand behind and not have to be worried that there may have been some skewing of the facts. So that's my concern. And I would propose that we use a different arts consultant or use HGA primarily and then piece out a smaller portion of that study to someone else who has experience in all the arts. And I also want to, I looked through the references from Sutton, and it appears that they are primarily performance arts. And I think that we should be looking into someone who has a broader base of all arts, ideally with more of a national recognition, and ideally with maybe a bigger and more forward vision. I read their report from the first report that they wrote, and I was very concerned by both some of the things that were missing in the report that I would have expected to find in a report of that nature, utilization figures, usage figures, even I was looking for some other pieces, and the quotes from them concerned me with respect to being able to think in a creative way. One of their comments is the current class offerings should not be disrupted by radical changes to operations, or should EAC choose to retain its focus strictly on the visual arts, there is little else it could or should do differently. I do think that we need to get someone in there that might be able to look into what else we could be doing or should be doing differently. So I would strongly recommend that we use a different consultant for that.
Yeah, and I may just be confused, and this may just be in our packet for background information, but on page 33 of our packets, there is the document titled Former Public Works Site Background Conceptual Civic Program from May 2015, and it lays out square footages for studio arts, for performing arts space, front of the house, the back of the house, and meeting rooms. Is this just something that people were discussing in May and it's a concept, or is this what we're starting from as we're doing this feasibility study? I guess what I'm saying is, this our starting point, or are we just throwing this out the window?
That's a great question, and I'm glad that you asked. I would say that it is not a starting point, in that we are going to take those numbers and that program and move it forward. I think that it's important that we review all of the information that has been done and that is in front of us. I don't want to throw that away, but I also feel like with that part of the study, our staff had some involvement, certainly. The involvement was not to the level that I would expect this next step study to be. We did not get into partners. We didn't get into programming specifically. It was just very 30,000 foot level. So I feel like we need to use that certainly as a reference point, but not at all a blueprint for how we're going to move forward.
Okay, I still have a concern, because if we look at just the square footage of what they're talking about on that in that particular part of the program, you've got 60,000 square feet, and 3/4 of it has already been dedicated to visual arts and a performing arts space. And then we throw in a couple of meeting rooms, some staff offices, and a little bit of space for the Historical Society, or the History Center, rather. Which to me, I don't know why I would spend $92,000 for a feasibility study if we've already decided that what we're doing is building a center that has a performing arts space, our visual arts space, and a few offices and a couple of meeting rooms. I don't get that. So
we definitely will look at the information that has been gathered. We will look at approximately the amount of square footage that has been allocated in terms of 60 or 65,000 square feet. We will look at what has been proposed for potentially in that space, but I also think we go back to the drawing board and talk with community ed and say, okay, community ed, how can we partner here? Are there any programs that you would like to see moved into a new facility to provide more space for you? Whether that's fitness, adult education, whatever it might be. It needs to get into much more detail. And I think that we take what we have to start with. But having said that, I also think we're pretty much starting from scratch. I really want to go back to the beginning, talk to all of our recreation programmers, talk to our staff, talk to all of the members that are going to be on this task force, talk to a variety of stakeholder groups as we kick off this project and say, okay, this is what we've talked about so far. What other ideas do we have? And I see us maybe coming forward with potentially 3 different concepts as we go through this. Maybe a smaller concept, a medium-sized concept, maybe add a little bit more fitness and have a larger concept. So I don't see us taking this and saying, let's figure out how to make these square footages work. This was a study that was done to see if it was even feasible to put a 65,000 square foot community center on there. This is going to be a much deeper and much more extensive look at a variety of different options. I hope that helps to clear it a little bit.
And I'm wondering if it's possible, and I would recommend it, that since we are trying to look at the broader picture and how the costs will affect the total city budget, that we would possibly add an analysis of the possible uses for the senior center and the arts center in this, so that we can see the bigger picture. Is this going to be a net add to parks operations, or is this going to be a consolidation? What are those possible uses for those other facilities?
Absolutely, we can do that as well.
Can I ask one more question around this? And maybe it was just part of the concept and it's not in there, but I also noticed in the plan that there's a section around the residential at the bottom half of the hill. Is that still in the proposal? So the bottom half would be residential, and we're talking about the middle half of the hill, if you will.
Yes, that is correct. That is the scenario 3 that the City Council has expressed interest in. So we wouldn't be looking at that residential component. We would only be looking at the community facility component. But yes, that is the concept that has been so far desired by the City Council. So
can you just shed some light on that? And I don't want to digress, but just to understand what that looks like. I mean, is that something we're selling off Edina Park land, or not even park space, but Edina land that we're selling off for a company for residential, or is that how has that worked into this plan?
I'm probably not the best person to answer all the questions about the development side of that property, but certainly, some sort of sale or lease of that property to a private developer would help defer and offset some of the costs for the community part of the facility.
So I'm going to tag on that a little bit. And I looked at that, and I have always really thought of that property as being public property. So selling off half of it has always been a concern, and I've never seen the actual numbers. When we hear the costs are going to be offset, I do think that having a thorough analysis of exactly what we are getting for selling off that property is something that everybody, I think, would like to hear about, including the park board, because it may be that for our long-term planning, the benefits of selling off that half of a piece of land don't outweigh what we could use as a community. So I would like to have potentially that option, as when you say that the square footage is something that we're not really sure about fitting our needs into and or making it a cost-effective new development for the city, whether or not it makes sense to sell off half that. Along with that thought is that I have been part of the process, and in the past there was a great deal of green and open space open for the public. So when I saw that drawing, and they had this interior courtyard, which in the original Grandview plans, we had many outdoor open space places to meet and gather. So if the council is set on selling off that lower portion, at least it would be part of the original plan that that courtyard would be open to the public. And I would encourage that, since the plans that I have been seeing for the other half don't have open and green space as we were hoping.
So, Member Jones, when you're referring to the courtyard, is that the courtyard as part of the residential component?
Yeah, there's a sizable green space that has no access to the public. It's a courtyard in the middle of this. And many of the drawings that our Grandview Steering Committee really enjoyed were commons areas that would look just like that, but it would be a commons area that would be a park for all.
All right. Are we done with comments and questions? As Ann had mentioned, there's a task force being put together, and we are looking for 2 members to serve on that from the Park Board, and we'd like to see if we can't manage that tonight. So if we'll make the process easy. If there's someone that would like to step forward, it's a 4-month, as envisioned, a 4-month assignment. So even there's a couple of folks that are on this board that are cycling out next February, they would still be able to participate in this. So is there anyone that would like to volunteer?
I'd be interested.
Okay, good.
I'd be interested.
All right. Sounds like 2, unless there's more. But okay, well, that makes it easy. So those are our 2. All right. Members Nelson and Jones. All right. Well, thank you, Ann, for that. Good. We'll move on. And up next is the Braemar Golf Course update. And we'll shuffle some papers, and we'll have Ann again speak to us concerning that.
Thank you very much, and also thank you, Member Nelson and Member Jones, for volunteering to participate in that task force. I think it's going to be a really great experience. So I just wanted to, the next 2 agenda items, I just wanted to give you an update on some things that we have going on in the department. We have a ton of things going on, and starting with the golf course. We have almost completely wrapped up construction of the driving range and new par 3. The fall weather has definitely benefited us. If you look at this picture, this is the new second hole. It is about twice as wide as it used to be, and it has turned into just a beautiful hole. The picture on the left-hand side is a during construction photo, and the picture on the right-hand side is during the grow-in. So we ended up adding a lot of sod to the project, and it really, really greened up. Obviously, immediately adding green to the greens and tees, and the golf course is looking just beautiful so far. This is a photo that we had taken. If you look in the upper left-hand corner to orient yourself, that's the parking lot for the clubhouse, and on the middle section. In this area is our brand new driving range. So this line that you see is the new concrete tee line. It's going to hold 58 new mats. And then the dirt area here is the new teeing area. and then everything out here is the driving range. We also have a small teeing area that is on the north side of the range, and that area is going to be used predominantly for private lessons. A lot of our lessons have been offered on the north end, and we want to bring our entire lesson program down to the south end of the range, except for some privates. So in the dirt area, we have 3 to 4 weeks worth of rotation that we can constantly move golfers forward and then back to keep people hitting off of fresh grass. The biggest complaint that we had was by the beginning of June we had nothing but dirt, but we didn't have a large enough tee area to be able to keep people moving to allow the grass to regrow. So we're really excited. And I know the golfing community is also very excited about getting out on that driving range. The grass is coming in beautifully. In fact, this is a view from today. This is that concrete tee line, and this is the hitting area. So you can see in just 2 weeks, the grass has come in really, really well. And we're going to be hitting off of mats on the concrete tee line next spring. As soon as we can get outside, we'll be hand picking. And it'll probably be sometime during the summer, depending upon what kind of a spring we have, before we'll be able to hit off the grass. But it's really important that we have a good, solid root system, because otherwise, as people are practicing, they're going to be taking the whole plant, as opposed to just taking the top off the plant and giving it the ability to regrow. But it's coming along really, really nicely. This also is a project from today. If you recognize the old driving range building, this is going to be getting a facelift very soon. It's going to be getting a new roof and new siding. We also redid the entry to the building. You used to walk down the sidewalk and then walk along the front of the building and in. And we put a nicer, more user-friendly sidewalk right up to the front of the building. And then we also added a patio that we're going to have a gazebo over, so people can come down and sit and watch maybe their kids take lessons, or if they just want to hang out and wait for a spot to open up. It's going to be a really nice spot down at the driving range. And then just an update on the master plan. We had an open house last week. Richard Mandel was in town, and he gave us an update on the master plan. And this is what it's looking like right now. The plan is that Richard is going to have his final drawings to our watershed consultant and hopefully submitted to the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District by the end of November. So then we have to go through the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District permitting process and the Army Corps of Engineers permitting process, and we hope to be able to put the project out for bid early next year, sometime maybe in the February range. We want to get out very early into the bidding environment. But the courses, or the design is coming along really well. We had some really good feedback and a lot of positive feedback from the open house that we had last week. And for those of you that haven't been out to the clubhouse yet, the Tin Fish is open. They've been busy. We did some renovations inside the clubhouse, and it's looking really good. Over on the right-hand side, that was the grand opening of the Tin Fish restaurant. And at the Golf Dome, we have a few new things as well. This year, we put in a new putting zone. It's a very nice practice putting green. And then a little bit later in the season last year, we added the Track Tee Smart Tee dividers. And they judge distance and ball speed. And we have 10 of those right now. We're going to be adding more. They were just incredibly popular. So a really, really nice addition to the Golf Dome. And then the other thing that we added to the Golf Dome a little bit later in the season last year is automatic ball dispensers. So it works out really great. If you remember, you used to walk into either the driving range or the Golf Dome and you would just see buckets of balls on the counter, and it was cluttered, and it was not the most efficient way to do business. These ball dispensers are integrated with our point of sale system. They're going to reduce labor costs. It gives us the ability to pre-sell buckets so people get keys. The keys are loaded up with a certain number of purchases. They don't even have to stop at the counter if they don't want to. They can just walk in and dispense their own balls. It was amazing to see our sales increase as soon as we gave people the ability to purchase buckets of balls in advance. And it also gives us a lot of information about customer sales, customer habits, and those sorts of things that we didn't have before. And then it certainly gives us increased operational and financial control over the number of buckets that we're selling. Then I wanted to give a little bit of a highlight to our winter trails that'll be opening before we know it here at Braemar. If you're not aware, for the last couple of years we have groomed multi-use trails out at Braemar. 2 different loops. One is a 1.7 mile trail and the other is a 1.19 mile trail. And this is what the trail looks like, and on the right-hand side is the piece of grooming equipment that we purchased to groom the trail. So they've really received a lot of use. You can walk on it, you can walk your dogs, you can ski, you can snowshoe, you can do whatever you want on the trails. And then a couple of operational and financial updates for you. If you recall, a couple of years ago, we recommended a 6-point plan, and the plan included narrowing the scope of golf operations, and we did that. As you know, we closed Fred Richards Golf Course. We invested in improvements at Braemar. We certainly invested in the driving range and the par 3 renovation, but we also invested in the interior of the Braemar Clubhouse, and we're going to be investing in the exterior of Braemar Clubhouse by siding and roofing projects and patio work. And then obviously, hopefully next year, we'll be investing in the renovation of the regulation course as well. Modified prices and discounts, we just took a little bit more control over our pricing structure. We really believe that we don't need to discount our product. We don't sell our tee times to outside vendors to sell our tee times, and that has worked really well for us this year. In terms of outsourcing ancillary services, specifically that was bringing in the Tin Fish restaurant. We closed our staff-operated grill and brought in the Tin Fish. That has worked out really well for us, both from a customer service standpoint and from a revenue standpoint. Increased marketing, we touched on that this year. We're really waiting until we have our new driving range and par 3 to market, and then certainly with the new regulation course as well. But we've done some different marketing types of experiences that we haven't done in the past. We've really done a lot with utilizing our point of sale to track our golfers and to really target specific golfers and their needs and specific tee times and email blasts and those sorts of things. And then improve customer service. We think we've done a really nice job with that. We've done some customer service training, and Joe Boot, our general manager, is constantly working with his staff to continue to improve their customer service. And then in terms of the financials, we have done a really nice job in reducing our operating expenses. The Tin Fish has come in and given us the ability to limit the number of seasonal and part-time staff that we have there. Certainly closing Fred Richards Golf Course has helped us from an expense standpoint, and it's given us the ability to offer some staffing efficiencies. We also, on the other side of it, have had reduced operating revenues. With the Fred Richards Golf Course being closed, we lost those revenues. The driving range and executive course closed in July, and the banquet room was closed from January to April because of our renovation in the clubhouse. So if you look at those numbers on the bottom, from years 2010 to 2014, we were in the red every year, and we are very confident that we are going to end the year of 2015 solidly in the black, even with so many of our revenue sources being closed. So we're very, very pleased with that turnaround. And with that, I stand to answer any questions about our golf enterprise. Brenda.
I have a question on the banquet room. So after the renovation, what have we seen a increase in the utilization or ability to sell that space?
You know, we definitely have seen an increase in interest. We feel like we're still getting the word out there, and I'm really very confident that starting in 2016, we'll really see the benefit. We're still seeing the lag because we were closed for those first 4 months, so it's hard for us to tell exactly. But I think if you hear from our staff, they would tell you that certainly the interest is increasing. So hopefully by 2016, we'll be able to give you a better report on actual numbers.
Are we done doing seeding and sodding on the par 3 for this season? I know that if you, along the Gleason side and some of those holes, there's just still a lot of black dirt, and that's just going to stay till next spring, and then that will be finished off?
That's a great question. I wish Joel Bood was here. He's actually on vacation this week. There is some of the environmental seeding that is going to take place either later this year or I think next spring. So that is all of the area that is going to be naturalized, and it just got too late in the year. So that will all be done, but I believe that the planting of that is going to take place next spring. I don't think that they're going to do a dormant seeding on that.
And first of all, really nice update. Seems like things are really going well at Braemar, so that's good to hear, and good to see the financial change too. Then it all fits nicely together. This may be semantics, but when I read something that says Braemar Master Plan, I think of the big picture. And so I just wonder if we might be better served to say, you know, Braemar 18 hole. And because even within that new footprint, we now have some new space that we have to figure out that's not included in this. So that's a different plan. So I just wonder if we should change that wording a little bit when you use this, to say this is our Braemar 18-hole, golf course.
That's a really good point. You're exactly right, because I have been referring to the larger plan of the whole golf course as the Braemar.
And we still have work to do there that hopefully we can get to pretty quickly, but we'll see.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. Thank you.
So, Ann, just another question on the 18-hole. How will the park board be involved in the next phase of that development?
You know, I really don't think that there is going to be, we can certainly give you updates when we have a final master plan version. I think we're really down to the very small tweaks. Richard is working on the floodplains at this point, figuring out the fill and the cut ratios and those sorts of things. So I don't think we're going to see any real alignment changes. We could see some tee box changes maybe. We could see some sand trap changes and those sorts of things. But in terms of the overall plan, we're not going to see any significant changes to that. So the park board doesn't have to worry about there being any big changes from what has been approved and that you've already seen. What I would envision being the next step in the process is for us to continue to move forward with the watershed and the Army Corps of Engineer approvals. And once we get that done, where we're either having those approvals in hand or feel like it's pretty much a slam dunk, then we're going to get our bid documents on the street. So once we're feeling fairly confident with the watershed district, Richard's going to be plugging away on the specifications for the bid document. So that's what's going to be taking place in the next couple of months. Then we'll be asking the city council to put the project out for bid. So in terms of the park board, I don't think that there are any more reviews or approvals that are needed, but we're certainly more than happy to come back and make any presentations to the board on any changes or next steps as we move through the process. Does that help? So then I would see, to take that one step further, if we're able to put the project out for bid in, say, February, hopefully, I would expect that we would be able to award bids sometime a little bit later in the spring, and then we would want to start construction probably after Labor Day, sometime in September of 2016. And then again, the course would be closed the entire year of 2017, and we'd open sometime during the summer of 2018.
Okay, good. I think it'd be helpful maybe once it gets through that bid process if we had an update.
Absolutely.
So we understood what was going to the city council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's a great idea. I'd be happy to do that.
Great, thanks.
Sometimes it's nice to step back and review the process and some of the park board comments and concerns from the residents to make sure we're touching all the bases. I think it's coming along beautifully. I like everything I see. It's going to be a beautiful course and area, and the finances are coming around. Have you heard anything positive or negative from residents or any of the stakeholders concerning user groups, and is everyone being situated and dealt with as expected, or are we leaving anybody behind?
We have really done a great job of being able to accommodate all user groups at the golf course. Going back to when we closed Fred Richards, we were able to accommodate every group that wanted to come over to the golf course. Even after closing the executive course for our renovations, we created an executive course on the Clooney 9 that was very well received by our executive course users. So we feel very strongly that we have not turned away any user groups. We haven't turned away any leagues. We've really been able to accommodate as many of the groups that wanted to play at Braemar. I would also like to give. I could talk about all the wonderful things that Joel Bood has done for quite a while here. But another thing that I was really excited that he did this year was study the tee sheets and figure out how people were playing the golf course, and trying to figure out how we could continue to get more rounds and to better accommodate users. And the one thing that he saw. He actually did a couple of things that were really smart. We heard regularly from customers that they didn't want to play the Clooney 9. So he set up the tee times in such a way that the majority of golfers going out, specifically on the weekends, were able to go out and play only the Hayes and Castle 9s and avoid the Clooney altogether. So if you got an earlier tee time, got tee times enough in advance, you were pretty much, if you wanted to just play those 2 9s, you were pretty much guaranteed that you could do that. With that alone, we saw an increase in tee times that were booked. The other thing that he did was he noticed that the trend continues that people want to play 9 holes. They're looking for a shorter, faster way to play golf. And so he studied the tee times and figured out, instead of having the tee sheet set up as 18-hole rounds, he took the blocks of time at the end of the workday and booked them as 9-hole rounds instead of 18-hole rounds, and it freed up an additional 40 rounds a day. And he booked a significant number of those additional 40 rounds a day. It was fantastic. The other thing that he did, we like most courses, have been dealing with pace of play issues, and he actually increased the amount of time between tee-offs, which you would think would be counterproductive to getting the number of rounds out, but it just gave people a little bit of extra time to play, and it kept everybody moving on the course, and we significantly increased pace of play on the course. So just a few things, a few minor tweaks that really improved the overall experience and revenues of the golf course this year.
A while back, Joe Aboud was also here talking about potential pricing strategies, and with an upgrade of the course, maybe reposition it competitively amongst different courses around the metro. Is there any strategy that's been worked up at this point for that?
I think we'll continue to, like we do every year, we'll continue to study the market and figure out what we feel is the best niche for us in the marketplace. But we really have been committed, and our pro formas would reflect the fact that we are not expecting or going to be recommending a significant increase in our rates. So we want to continue to make Braemar a very affordable course for everyone to play. We certainly want to make it as profitable as we could potentially make it, but we still want it to be a municipal course that everyone is able to afford to play. So the rates that we're proposing do not have significant increases, very modest, in fact.
I have a few questions. One picture I noticed, you talked about the north end, and before it used to have the cages you would walk through. How are they, is it currently this going to be the same cages you walk through to get to the north end, or how is that going to look?
The cages will not be there anymore, and that's part of the reason that we wanted to try to keep as many people on the south end. Unless people are doing a private lesson, they will not be going to the north end. So prior to that, we were sending almost all of our lessons to the north end, and it was important that we had that area protected. We still have fencing up there, and we have a cart path that's up that goes up in that direction, but it keeps it more on the golf course, so it's keeping it more out of play from the driving range. But really, it's going to be our goal to have almost everybody hitting from the large south end of the driving range.
So the private lessons will just take a cart and watch more carefully?
Well, there's still a fence. There's
Okay.
still a fence, but just the
But just
cage
not closed
part of
in
it.
part
Yep.
of it. Perfect. The other thing I was going to ask is I noticed a lot this summer, it was actually really popular at the 10 Fish that they had music, I think it was like Thursday through Saturday. Is there any plan to doing something similar to that in the winter to get people to continue to come out there on the weekends?
Absolutely. We're working on programming for the restaurant and for the banquet space. Yes.
The only other thing else I would say with regard to this, as well as some of the changes at the dome and the changes at the other dome, is how are we getting out that message? So I know there's a marketing part of it, but after our last meeting, I did spend some time on the website trying to figure out how do we tell people about, like, when are the walking hours and things like that. And I didn't, it's not updated out there, and I actually tried reaching out there to try to figure out what's that information so I can tell people too and take this and tell others, but it's not really information that's out there to find it on times. And I think these are some really great changes, but if you aren't reading the minutes, which I would assume most residents are not, that how do we get that message out there?
We are still working on the hours for Braemar Field. In fact, the walking track is not open right now. Braemar Field opened last Saturday. We had a few problems with the installation this year. One being wind. The day that we wanted to put the dome up, we had 13 to 20 mile an hour gusts, and so we weren't able to put it up. We had to get another whole crew to come in at 9 o'clock at night, and they worked until 4 in the morning to put the dome up. But because of some of the delays we had a fan motor on the blower that went out as we were starting to inflate, so that delayed us for another day. So the long and the short of it is that we didn't get the insulation done on the dome before we opened it, and we also didn't get the netting up. So because the netting is up, it is not a safe environment for walking. So until we get that up, I do expect it to be fairly soon. Then we need to compare it with the schedules of soccer and lacrosse to make sure, but we will get the schedule up just as soon as we have the walking track open.
Yeah, I just think it's important if we're doing a lot of these really great changes at the golf dome as well, that how are we making sure that the websites or whatever are updated and there's awareness there, because it's really hard to find that it even exists. So I think it's important to tell people so they continue to come out there, including like the winter walking or snowshoeing.
Sure.
I've got one other. When we were going through the initial scenario review, Richard Mandel had that really nice booklet that he put together that showed all of the different options, spent some time talking through why he was making that decision. Are we planning to ask him to do something like that with the current view of the 18?
It has changed really very little from the option that was selected. So we are working off of one of the options that he had in there. That was the goal of him putting the book together, so we could look through and take all of the information. We'll have a final master plan that's completed, but we don't expect putting together another booklet to go along with it.
Okay. The reason why I ask is I've had more than a few of my friends who belong to private courses, both to the south and the north of here, that have said, if that's a really nice course, I might look at giving this up and going back and playing at Braemar. And so if there's a way that we can continue to kind of communicate that and get people excited about it, those are the really hardcore golfers that'll take a real close look at it again.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, and I've heard that as well. What we intend to do is when we have a final master plan of the golf course completed, we have a marketing plan in place, so we will be doing regular blasts and updates to anyone that's on our mailing list, and we'll use city extras and all the regular communication devices that we have in the city as well, giving people updates as to the process and the progress of the process. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Ann. That closes out that section. It seems like tonight, and we've had a very busy year. There's awful lot of things going on. So this entire meeting really is updates and some information processing for all of us. Ann is going to now continue with the 2015 Parks and Recreation Department project update to give us more and more updates.
Thank you. I hope you're not tired of me yet. So I do have a lot of updates. It was a very, very busy year again in 2015, and I have just so many projects that we completed in our department that I'm really proud of. First being Braemar Field. I know that you've heard a lot about Braemar Field, but we sold over 1,245 dome hours in 2015. The rates that we charge for the dome, for the full dome, fell between $280 and $350, and that's depending upon the time of day. $350 is obviously prime time. We have the walking track, and the temperature that we shoot to maintain in the dome is 55 degrees. So certainly not balmy, but better than the outside conditions. And as Member Nelson mentioned, we do have the walking track in there, and that is free. So we will work on getting the updated calendars out there as soon as we possibly can so that everyone is aware of when those hours are. On the lower right-hand side, if you haven't been out there recently, we opened the dome last December, but because of an early snow last year, we didn't have any of the landscaping done around Braemar Field or around the backyard rink. So on the lower right-hand side, you'll see a picture of the landscaping in the seating area outside of the Braemar Field accessory building. Turned out really nice. Here's a couple of pictures inside the dome if you haven't been in there yet. On the right-hand side, that was our grand opening. I just love that picture of Goldie Gopher with that little girl.
Say, Ann, before you leave that, do you have a sense of what we consider full capacity at the dome? How many hours could we sell?
Oh, great question. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the 1,245 hours that we sold were higher than the number that we projected in our pro forma.
Okay.
So the total number of hours would be really high. We do have a number of hours calculated starting like with after school time through the end of the evening, but I don't have that number off the top of my head. But the fact that we were over our pro forma, we were very, very pleased with. And this is a photo showing the completed landscaping and completed backyard rink facility. And if you remember earlier this spring, we had a proposal from the Edina Soccer Club to donate about $55,000 for a futsal court, and the photos on the right-hand side are photos of the futsal court. Worked out really well. It was a very popular amenity. We ended up getting it in a little bit later than we had hoped, purely from a production standpoint. It took a little bit longer to get it in, so I know the soccer club is really, really excited to get this thing installed and to start programming it from early spring until late fall next year. And the photo on the upper right-hand side is as we've been opening new facilities, we have our weekly staff meeting at one of our new facilities. So that's a picture of our executive leadership team meeting at the backyard rink. And then on the left-hand side is a photo of the landscaping just outside of the backyard rink. For those of you that were out here before, if you remember what the old soccer field used to look like, where you see the retaining wall on the left-hand side, that used to be a rickety old wooden tie type of a wall. And so this whole area has been very, very much enhanced from the old look that was there. And then on the left-hand side picture, if you see this area, this is a new gas fireplace, which, even though it hasn't been cold, has already proven to be a very popular amenity in the backyard. And then this is something that was added this spring too. It just didn't get done last fall because of the weather, but these are sunshades. So we did analysis of the way that the sun hit the backyard rink, and even a small stripe of sun that continued to move across the rink melted the ice pretty quickly. So we put these sunshades up to keep the sun from hitting the ice, and it's really already making a very significant difference.
Are those permanently angled at the same, or are they movable? Okay.
Yep, they are. They are permanently angled there. The other thing that I would note is if you were out there last year, because of the early snow, we didn't have any of this concrete in. So it was Class 5 gravel last year, and it was a real nightmare for our staff to try to keep kids' skates sharp, keep them off the gravel, and keep the water going where we wanted the water to go. So it's going to be much better for users and spectators back there this winter. And then this picture on the left-hand side I took not this last Sunday, but the Sunday before. That was the very first day. I believe it was November 1st, the very first day that the backyard rink was open. And this was at about 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning, and I think it was in the 50s already. The rink held up really nicely, even though temperatures did reach 70 degrees that week. But you can see even on that warmer day, we had people around the fire pit. Really nice amenity. And then I thought this was a great picture of the young ladies out on the rink that morning. And this is a photo of the storage building. This is what the dome looks like during the non-dome season. So this is a storage facility that we built on the east side of Braemar Field. As you can see, we hang all of the lights from the ceiling. This is the rolls of the insulation, and then all of the rolls of the dome fabric. It was absolutely amazing to me that we were able to fit all of that inside that building. Then Pamela Park. Wow, Pamela Park turned out just to be a beautiful, beautiful facility. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. I know that the park board was very involved with the design of the Pamela Park shelter building. Here's a picture of the outside and then a couple of photos of the inside of the building. It has already proven to be a very popular facility for the residents, particularly in that neighborhood. We've had a lot of resident use of that building as well. These windows on the east side directly overlook the skating rink, so it's going to be a great warming house during the winter as well. Then a couple more pictures of Pamela Park. This is overlooking the park. This is an enhanced wetland area. If you recall, we added trails throughout the park system that essentially make a big loop. They connect to 58th Street on the north. They connect to 62nd Street on the south, giving residents a really great way to access the park in a much safer way to get around. We improved the entry on the north side. We improved parking on the north side, on the west side, and on the south side. And we also added the artificial turf field that has been really heavily scheduled as well. And then we also upgraded another senior size field to a sand peat field, and that is growing in very nicely as well. Another thing that we added at Pamela Park was 2 different concrete pads with electrical outlets for food trucks. So one of the things that we talked about for this facility is, do we want to have any concessions, because it's such a heavily used park for athletic events, and we decided to opt for the food truck route, and look forward to seeing those used next year. And then the photo on the right-hand side is the new sand peat field on the very easterly edge of the park. I already talked about Braemar Golf Course. I don't think I need to go into that in any more detail. For those of you that haven't seen Phase 4 of the promenade, turned out beautifully as well. On the left-hand side, you'll see the Sand Hill Crane sculptures that were purchased for that facility, and on the right-hand side shows the end of the water feature that is in the park. If you recall, a few months ago, we had a presentation by Nick Lagueros, who was doing sculptures for a group representing Northwest Airlines in honor of Donald Nyrup. Just last week, the final sculpture was installed, and this area here is pinstripes. So this is on the north lake part and on the easterly edge. Here's one sculpture, here's the little girl sculpture, and here's the larger sculpture. And I have a couple of close-ups here for you to see the sculptures. They've already been really popular. I've seen a lot of people getting their photos taken next to the sculptures. So Nick did amazing work, and we really appreciate that donation to Centennial Lakes Park. It was about a $135,000 donation through the Edina Community Foundation that made that happen. At Edinburgh Park, we replaced an original slide dating back to 2003 with another triple wave slide, which is one of the most popular amenities at Adventure Peak. That was quite a renovation to get that slide in there. I think you're all familiar with the Veterans Memorial. That was a project that had been worked on in the city for quite a while, and that turned out just beautifully as well. Recently, within the last month, we resurfaced the Utley Park tennis courts. And we also recently completely redid the basketball court at Todd Park, and also have a brand new hockey rink at Todd Park. Those boards, if you recall, are removable boards, and this is a brand new set of removable boards. So at this facility alone, in those 2 investments, it was about $100,000 that we made in improvements at that park. Go ahead.
If there's going to be lines added to the Todd Park.
There is, and it will not be done until next spring. The cure time on the asphalt is a month, and the temperatures have to be over like 50-some degrees in order for the paint to cure properly.
So far, we're on track.
So we made the decision to not risk having the paint peel up, and so the paint is going to be applied next spring.
Perfect. Thank you.
And this is the York Park baseball field. We had money from a family, the Nunn family, through the Edina Community Foundation, that have made some improvements to this baseball field, and this is something that was done this fall. We redid the sod and the ag line on the infield, and then we added some sod on the outside of the fence as well. And I think this field turned out just absolutely beautifully. If you had seen it before, I don't think you would recognize it. It turned out really nice. Again, an amazing donation to the park system. These are dugouts that are brand new this year at Garden Park. We did some renovations to the baseball facility at Garden Park last year, but we didn't have a chance to get to the dugouts. The dugouts were modeled after the dugouts that we built at Countryside Park a couple of years ago, and we actually have a gentleman on staff, one of our park maintenance workers, that completely built these dugouts from hand, both at Garden and at Countryside, and he did an amazing job. It's Dave Workey. He does amazing work. If you recall, earlier this year in July, we did a major buckthorn removal project. We had 125 volunteers from River Valley Church in Eden Prairie. And I took these pictures today, so it doesn't show quite the extent of the buckthorn that was removed that day. But if you can picture, this is an area just off of the parking lot. This was so full with buckthorn you couldn't see through it. So they took just a tremendous amount of buckthorn, and then this is a trail, also same thing, you couldn't see through it. It was so thick with buckthorn. So that was a really amazing volunteer initiative. We had 125 volunteers on a Saturday, and we had 11 staff people that came in and helped with the removal as well. Lewis Park Hockey Rink got brand new boards this year. Again, that was a construction project that was completed in-house by our park maintenance team. We did an open streets event this year. It was attended by over 9,000 people, 80 booths, 2 stages, and we think was a really tremendous success this year. We hope to get some funding for it again next year and make it even bigger and better in 2016. Another big initiative that Susan actually ran for our department was the incorporation of Max Galaxy, which is a web and cloud-based recreation software solution. We rolled this out in August. The Golf and the Senior Center are going to go live in March of 2016, but it provides point-of-sale, online registration, membership management, facility scheduling, league scheduling, and digital signage. And it gives our staff the ability to log in from home or wherever we are to track what's going on at our facilities. So it's been a really, really nice update, and we hope that it's a nice update in terms of registration for our residents as well. Also giving residents the ability to do online facility scheduling that we haven't been able to offer before. As you know, we're still continuing to work on the purchase of the Weber Woods property from the city of Minneapolis. If all continues to go well, hopefully we'll own our share of the property by the end of the year. And this is a photo of some of our Braemar staff after we passed our building and fire inspections to open the dome at the very end of the day when we wanted to open the very next day last Saturday. So they did an amazing job working all hours of the day and night to get that facility open. So with that, I stand to answer any questions.
Thank you for having the pictures with the presentation. That's really very helpful to see that all. It's very wonderful.
Thank you, Ann. There's a lot of tremendous work. Very, impactful and beautiful accomplishments this last year. So, nicely done. All right, we've got a few other board member comments, and we can maybe both Kathy and Ellen, I guess I've got something to say as well, but one of you two want to speak first, and maybe I'll finish up. So.
Okay. Dan had asked me just to give a brief update on what was going on with sort of the outdoor and gym facilities through the school district and the referendum. And we're still working through the budget. We're still at the schematic plan level, but I can tell you that on the West Campus, we'll have 2 turf fields, which will replace current grass fields. We'll be updating the tennis courts on that side. We'll be increasing the parking and the access to the lower fields, and there'll be connections to the bike trail that's coming in through our property there at the Three River Park District, the 9 Mile Creek bike trail. On the East Campus, we'll again have 2 turf fields that will be replacing grass fields. We'll be eventually replacing the Coleman Field turf, although that's not part of the referendum. That's through another pot of maintenance money that we can access, and then eventual replacement of the Coleman track. There's also, as part of West Campus, 4 more gym courts. There's going to be upgrades, renovations to elementary school playgrounds. and both Highlands and Cornelia will get some larger multi-use gymnasium type spaces because for the size of those schools, they're short on space, so they will get some additional space, and that's what's planned.
So the high school itself will get 4 additional inside court areas? Really? Oh, okay. All right, a lot of improvements there as well. Pretty impressive. All right, Ellen?
Yeah, and I thought I would just report back to you all. I am the representative for the Human Services Task Force, and what that committee was supposed to do was to review some proposals for grants that the city normally funds for human services, and 7 organizations put forth grant proposals, and we reviewed all 7. They made presentations. We also had people from the community that were in kind of positions where they interface with these types of organizations and know the needs in our community. So it was a very eye-opening experience. I did not realize how many needs there are and how many wonderful people there are working in these nonprofits serving the needs of the community. So it really took a long time to understand all of them. I'm not really prepared, or I don't know if you all want to know the details of each of those, but I will tell you the names of the organizations, and the total is that the city this year will be giving $87,000 out to these organizations. One is the Bridge for Youth, Cornerstone Advocacy Service, Normandale Center for Healing and Wholeness, Oasis for Youth, Senior Community Services, Store to Door, and VEEP. So the City Council has yet to approve our recommendations. They're going to be doing that at their next meeting.
All right. Well, thank you, both of you. That was some important information for us to know about. So I wanted to just speak briefly. In the last month, there was the first annual all-chair meeting held by Scott Neal, the city manager, and he wanted to pull all the chairs of the various boards and commissions together and share some ideas and see if we could, get some traction from that. So, some of the things they talked about briefly. One was some different changes that they're banting about. We have even struggled with sometimes what is it exactly that we are to do for the city council versus what's expected, and how is that communicated. So Mr. Neal had talked around an idea called the city charge idea, and all these things I'm mentioning are still being played with a little bit. They haven't been solidified exactly, so this is kind of an initial discussion of this. But he came up with this, that there might be 4 different charges that they could initiate, I guess, to a board or commission, and ask for. Charge number 1 would be to study and report on a particular topic or an idea. Charge number 2 would be to review and comment. Charge number 3 would be to review and recommend, and charge number 4 would be to review and decide and actually take some action. So that is that. Is there any? I guess I'm open to some feedback too, that we could, if anyone has any ideas on this, positive or negative or additional perspective on it, that would be helpful. So feel free to break in at any time as I'm talking to these. These are open discussions, really. Now, there's also whenever we put together a working group, there's either committees or a working group we can put together to study a particular topic and idea. A committee consists of people strictly within this body, so board members. A working group consists of members, but also outside residents. So there's a difference there. Whenever there's a working group put together, there must be at least a 14-day public notice for the public to react to it and potentially show some interest. So when we do that, and we might be doing some of that next year as we tackle some of our work plan, there's an actual worksheet they put together. That's a working group green print, and it has different pieces of information that need to be listed and posted for public consumption, I guess. So I won't go through all that. There's some details, but when we do that, we can make sure that we do that appropriately. The other topic was advisory communication, and I think we'd talked about this maybe last meeting and the meeting before, a little bit about what this is, and they solidified a little bit more so everyone would understand throughout the city. What is an advisory communication? It is a form of communication with City Council when a board or commission wants to give input on an issue, but due to timing or the nature of the issue, meeting minutes are deemed insufficient. Advisory communications are written by a board or commission member. When is it appropriate to submit an advisory communication? Advisory communications should be used if the board or commission wishes to advise the council on a topic not included on their approved work plan. And it's purely advice or suggestion to the council. So give a little bit more background on that. We really haven't used those traditionally often, if at all, since I've been a part of the board here. But if the right situation arises, it's nice to know that that's available. So,
can I comment on that?
Sure.
And I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Is that only for items not on a work plan?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So we've just heard, at the beginning of this meeting, we've just heard that our minutes are going to be quite a bit summarized.
Yes.
So what if the board wants to make sure that there are some points that have been made at the meeting that may or may not be in those minutes?
I don't know that that's been addressed enough. What say you, Ann, on that? You were at that meeting as well.
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a good answer for you, to be perfectly honest. I don't believe that is the intention of the advisory communication. I know that the intention of the shorter minutes is to try to create consistency throughout the minutes of all the different boards and commissions, and again to try to minimize conflicts that some boards or commissions had been having in the amount of time that people spent reviewing minutes and trying to get the accuracy of the minutes down. So I know that those were some of the reasons that the minutes were shortened. But in terms of the communication with the City Council, I don't believe that it's the intention of the advisory communication to continue to communicate to the Council on something that was discussed at a board meeting to further the minutes.
There's also the staff prepares reports and recommendations on different items, which is another way we can make sure, and we can work with Ann and Susan and the staff to make sure if there's certain elements that you don't think are in the minutes that need to be presented to the council, that's another avenue. So
yeah, my concern though is a little something different, because it puts staff in a very awkward position. That I would not want to put any staff member in the position where they may have been directed by the city manager to pursue a certain agenda. And the board may see our role as being just citizen advisors that have our perspective, which may or may not be aligned with the city manager. And in my opinion, that is exactly what our role is as an advisory group, is that we should not have to worry about being censored, which is that's a strong word for what I'm hearing. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I don't know if sometimes that would be the most appropriate way for us to get what our message is, which is some of the points that we make, which may or may not end up in the minutes now. The minutes really are very much abbreviated. So I just don't, I'm going off the board, but I would really think twice about saying I want to be on a board if the things that we're talking about are not even going to get to the council. It would be a waste of time. So I just want to make sure that what we're doing is laying out a policy that doesn't waste the time of the citizens.
All right. Very well said. I can't disagree with you. I share the same concern, and it is, I think you have our role pegged as exactly that. So important voices for all of us, and we need to be heard, and that's why we volunteer our time. So I want to make sure the process isn't squashing some of that. So I agree with you.
Two things that I would add. I don't know that it's going to completely answer all of the questions or comments that you might have, but one thing is all of our meetings, no matter where they are recorded. So anyone has access to a recording of a meeting. And the other thing that Dan summarized is if there is something that we are taking review and comment from the board, we can ask each member to provide comment or statement that could be recorded also for recommendation to the City Council. So that's something that we've done some, but I think with the formalization of the charges that we're given, we'll have a specific idea of exactly what the City Council wants from us on any particular item. So that would be a way to get your voice recorded as well.
Sure, I have used that a couple times this year even. So if it's an important enough item, I think we can do it. It's called a roll call vote. We can certainly do that, and that gets into the minutes member by member with their comments. So.
Yeah, but I'm just going to put another perspective out there. As a citizen, I can always write to my council member. That's something that I can always do. But it seems as if now that I have joined a group, and if the members of this group agree that we have a statement that we want to make to City Council and formally present that, we are now limiting ourselves from being able to do that.
I'm less concerned about that. I think we can formally still make a statement as a group, and it gets to the council. I think what we might be losing is individual specific verbiage and comments, but what the group does as a whole, and when the group speaks, that is still getting into the minutes and still getting to council. So, but I don't share that concern. It's a legitimate concern, but I do think if you're concerned about your specific comments and opinions always being laid out as we did before, that's probably not going to be the case.
No, I'm saying that even as I'm not sure if the way that it's laid out that if we had a consensus as a group, if that's going to be how do we make a statement to City Council?
That is not being taken out of the minutes. So if we take action, we take a vote. The discussions in general are still being reported in the minutes. So as the minutes are, and maybe Janet or Ann can share some, but as the minutes, the instructions to the taker of the minutes and the reporters still is to, the overall generalities of what's taking place, and the discussion is still being reported. So that's not being lost. Anything, Susan, you'd like to add anything?
Yeah, no, we were just kind of discussing it, and that is correct. Yeah. We'll still be generally keeping track of the general topics, the general conversations in the minutes.
So, I would dare say if it's something that you feel personally is so important that you really want to get something, I think we can take a special note of that and maybe make sure that gets into the minutes as well. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's why we were reviewing the minutes and making sure that we approve them, right? So if we felt like something wasn't in the minutes to the level that we needed it to be able to explain our point, I would think we could add that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Sure, and that's why we do that every meeting. So that's a very important point. So, okay. All right. Any other board member comments?
I just had one. I noticed this last month we got some web time, at least, on the Speak Up Edina for Parks, Recs, and Programming, and just wondered what the department does with that. So it wasn't an overwhelming amount of conversation out there, but there certainly were some comments. And just curious what happens after that.
You know, I haven't seen the results of it yet. I heard that there were 90 comments, and a presentation is going to be made by our communications department to the City Council next Tuesday. And after that, those comments will be given to us, and we'll review and see what kind of action needs to be taken.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? No? Any reaction from our student members about the plans for the school and some of the athletic facilities and that kind of thing?
I think they're very excited. It's exciting. I wish that I was going to be around a little bit longer to be able to utilize more of them, but they're still very excited to hear about.
Yeah.
Yeah, same for the most part. I wish I could have stayed a little longer at Edina High School to be interested in the continuing of the 4 gyms.
Mm-hmm. So. And the tennis courts.
Right.
Huh. All right. Well, there are no further staff comments, as Ann has talked herself hoarse here probably tonight. So that brings us to the end, and seeing no further agenda items, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right, there's a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. Meeting adjourned.